This segment of Open Up is brought to you in part by Abeta-Weed, the locally owned company that has everything you need for lush, weed-free gardens and lawns, from the smallest backyards to the property of the biggest businesses, and with top quality equipment and products better than the big chains, and they service what they sell. Located on Rosedale Highway, just east of Callaway, across from the promenade. Be loyal, buy local, abetaweed.com. You bet. You can go to Lowe's and Home Depot, but if you go to Abeta-Weed, that money stays right here in Kern County and has a bigger impact here. So be loyal, buy local.
Yes, it does. And thank you, Abeta-Weed. Well, Don, what an exciting first half of the show.
With those great young men.
Yes, excellent. And I loved, to hear the words out of Jamie's mouth about what's important and how she's guiding them.
She's got her priorities in order.
Yes, indeed. Well, Don, what's coming up?
You know, I think most of us at one time or another offer prayers up to heaven, and especially when sickness comes. And what is there about prayer that has healing power? Well, there's a man coming to Bakersfield this Saturday. He's going to be speaking at the Beale Memorial Library at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. I plan to go, but I wanted you to hear him as well. His name is Mark Swinney. We have him on the phone. Mark, are you there?
I sure am.
Mark, we've got 12 minutes, so we need your elevator version of about this. What is there about prayer? You've studied this, participated in it, that has a healing power.
Yeah, I am. I'm very interested in what is it that connects prayer with healing. I think there isn't a listener out there who hasn't at one point wondered, if I pray, how would I know I'm even making a connection with God, and how could it make a difference? In the entire Bible, that Bible is just so big, it's got so many words, but in my opinion, I would have to say that maybe it could be that the most important sentence, most significant one, is just 3 words, and that is that God is love. And it is this God who is love that is, I believe, is key to understanding how to pray, what you're praying to, and the kind of answers you get. Everybody in California, I know, people think about the love of God. It's not something that's just a Sunday thing anymore. It's not just a thing you think about when you read the Bible. It's more of an everyday thing. And the love of God, it's becoming more mainstream. And if the love of God is that important for the world, it must be important when it comes to praying and healing. And so that's what I'll be talking about, just how specifically to know God as love, and then what that can mean when you're really, when you're in trouble.
Mark, so we cry out to a loving God for his love, his favor, his help, his intervention in crises. Tell us about, what's at the other end? Who's hearing it, and how does he exert his favor on our behalf?
Well, it's an interesting thing. I know when I was first praying, a lot of times I didn't understand what was on the other end, as you say. I didn't understand what God was like. And so my questions when I would pray, I would ask God, how could I be in such trouble, or how could I be ill? If you're divine love, if you're love, God, why would I be in such trouble? And it turns out, when I would pray that way, when I'd say, God, please tell me, why in the world am I sick, or why in the world am I hurt? I would never get an answer. But from God's perspective, I've learned that God loves us each so much that, as the Bible says it, He's created us in His image. And to be the image of God is something that can't be taken away from you. It can't be taken away by sickness or illness or lack or injustice. That love of God actually maintains us as His likeness. When God creates us as His likeness, that cannot be changed. And so our prayer actually doesn't make us become God's likeness. Our prayer actually helps us realize the nature of ourselves as the likeness of God. And what happens then is your thought changes, your perspective changes, your whole world changes, and that's how healing occurs.
You know, Mark, I remember a story about a famous American author, Robert Louis Stevenson, Treasure Island and all those great books.
Yes.
He lay ill one time, and a friend came to him and said, perhaps God is using this illness to take you aside for a while so that he might whisper in your ear things that you might not otherwise hear. What do you think about that?
I think sometimes that we do need a timeout. We really, our lives move so quickly. And I think, we kind of it's important to take a stop to it all. Jesus did it. He would sometimes take off for 40 days and just commune with God. But he wouldn't stay there. He would go out then and help the world. And so there are times, I think it's happened to all of us, where we get in trouble and we just need to sit down on the sideline for a little bit and get much closer, understanding what our relationship with God is.
So, Mark, I guess it follows, if God is love, if that's the essence of his nature, then as we become more loving, we become more godly or godlike. How do we achieve that kind of love?
You know what? That's so interesting you asked this, because I was watching your last segment and seeing the basketball team. Now, I'm from New Mexico. In fact, that's where I am right now as I'm talking with you. But I actually went to college there in the Central Valley. I went to UC Davis, and I was a baseball player there, and I played after college too. Well, when I was finished with college, this kind of goes into this answer of the question. When I was finished with college, I had an opportunity a few years later to coach a baseball team that represented a large region. This team traveled up and down the East Coast, actually, and it was a team of real good kids, just like the kids you had on the show a few minutes ago. Now, the first year I was involved with this team, I was the assistant coach, just like that person was who was on. And the head coach was one of those kind of coaches. He meant well, but his model for coaching had been, I guess, just a tough guy who really just hollers at the kids. And after every game, he'd sit them down in the outfield and one by one tell everybody what he was doing wrong, what he did, what the mistakes he made in the game. And pretty soon, the kids, all they did, instead of going there to have fun or to win, they only went there not to make a mistake. That was their only hope. And so it was a pretty tough time. And I think we played 24 games and won about 2. And I think we hit 2 home runs for the whole year. Now, the next year, I was asked to be the head coach. And so I thought about that very question in regards to how God sees us and God's love. And here's what I mean. A lot of times people, I think, look at religion and religious doctrine, and as they get more familiar with, like, the Ten Commandments or Jesus' Sermon on the Mount, they feel more and more guilty. It just points out what they're doing wrong. It's just like that coach. They just feel worse and worse the more they learn about the Sermon on the Mount and the Beatitudes and all that. And I was reading it while I was coaching this team, when I was preparing to coach the team. And I remember reading that, and I thought, God is love. Those things aren't in the Bible to make us feel guilty. Those things are in the Bible to help us understand what we're doing right, help us to identify the things we're actually doing right. So I remember very well when I had that team the first day, I sat them all down, and I said, okay, well, we have a season to go, 24 games, we'll travel all around, and what I'm very interested in is what you do right. Now, coaches always give, those long speeches right at the beginning of the season, and the kids, they hear it, but hardly ever do they really believe it. Well, after a week or two, they saw that when the kids were in practice and when we were doing things, I only was interested in what they did right. And they started to kind of change. Before, they would, be on each other's cases quite a bit because they were just watching for what they did wrong and trying to get out of the coach's, anger. Now they started to change. Well, then we had our very first tournament. We had to travel up to Pennsylvania. We went there. And I remember on the first game we had, the first inning, the kids were really watching me to see if I was going to change and get away from that philosophy of watching what they do right. Well, this is funny. They were only 12-year-old kids, and so I brought a little bag of peanut M&Ms, and when the kids came off the field, it was funny. I just took one peanut M&M to any kid who did something right. If you backed up a base, if you made a good throw, if you helped somebody, I'd give them a peanut M&M, and they'd laugh. But pretty soon, they were really looking for what they could do right, and they'd come into the dugout after every inning, and they're really watching. Now, it was the funniest thing. They changed so much that they began looking for the good in each other. And by the end of the year, we only lost 6 games. We won the rest, and we hit 18 home runs. Now, I saw the difference there.
Yep.
You see, we look at our lives so often from a perspective of guilt and self-hatred.
Right.
God doesn't do that for us.
Right. You know, Mark, your remarks bring to mind something from Coach Augie Garrido, the winningest college baseball coach ever in America. And he had a philosophy. He said the relationship between the coach and the player should be as close as those two personalities will allow. And if the Lord is our coach, then what we're hearing is he wants to be as close as our personality will allow to him. Don't you think?
I agree. And the closer the better. And you know what? I know there are a lot of people out there in the listening audience who maybe are praying about something right now, praying about something in relation to themselves, maybe someone they love, or a world situation. The closer you feel to God, the more effective your prayers will be. You'll see. And that's just what I'm going to be talking about on Saturday.
You bet. Saturday.
I want to
Chris,
equip people to do that.
Chris, do you have there it is. It's going to be a presentation on prayer at the Beale Public Library, Saturday at 3 o'clock. It's free. Boy, I plan to be there. I want to meet Mark. I want to hear more about what he has to say. Mark, thanks for staying on the phone with us. We really appreciate all you shared with us. And
you're so welcome. Thank you, Tina, too.
You're so welcome. Thanks for joining us.
Well, we've had prayer power. Now let's have she power.
The She Power Ambassador coming up after the break.